Welcome to another session of Office Hours. This is September of 2015, and we are excited to have Alfresco founder John Newton with us today. He has been a visionary in the ECM world for a long time now, so we're going to talk about that in a moment. First, a couple announcements. Tech Talk Live for October, we don't have scheduled yet. But we do have the speaker lined up. Ruiz is going to share his part 2 on performance tuning. That was a very popular presentation a couple months ago that he ran out of time, so he's going to cover the rest of that. We're just pinning down the day. And we also have office hours for November and December lined up, just pinning down days for the speakers there. We have speakers lined up. We're pinning down the days there, too. We also will have office hours with the user assistance team on Thursday, November 12th. So we took a lot of questions for that in June, but had a delay, so we're actually going to get that done. And at alfresco.com, we have a redesigned alfresco.com. There's a section for Alfresco days, so alfresco.com/alfresco-day, and that has a list of all of our global Alfresco days. The Alfresco days have a technical track and a business track, and we're doing 12 cities, I think we have listed there. So highly recommend you check that out and see when we come near you. John, I believe you were going to attend a few of those. Do you remember which ones are on your schedule?
Yeah, so I've just been rescheduled to do a couple of them. One is Boston, which is coming up in November, and before that I will be in Geneva. And I believe there's some other ones as well. I just don't remember. Those are the ones that are nearer term. I have to get my flights organized, hotels, all that stuff. So
excellent. And it looks like the next one's Sydney on the 6th of October. Then Geneva is a couple weeks after that. We're going to Poland and Zurich. Quite a few actually lined up through next February. So that's the Alfresco Day events. That's the list of announcements. So let's dive into today's topic. So John is founder of Alfresco, as I mentioned. Pulled a little biography off the website. Leading provider of modern ECM and BPM, business process management. John was a co-founder of Documentum, and he also started out is one of the founding engineers at Ingress. He's also an entrepreneur in residence at Benchmark Capital, and one of the luminaries behind the AIM organization of ECM professionals. So I think John told me he stepped down from that position and is chair last December. Did I get that right, John?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so still very heavily involved in the broader ECM industry. So also with us, we have two community contributors, Boriss and Cristina. It was their idea for us to have this event, so I invited them to join us. They help collect questions, and they'll be participating and sharing the questions and joining the conversation. So, Cristina, would you mind introducing yourself briefly?
Hello. Yeah, sure. So my name is Cristina. I just recently came from Brussels to Spain because I was working there at the European Commission. Right now, I am collaborating with two different companies: Benfia for IT consultant, Alfresco, and then also for training with Avery from the German. So yeah, you know, actively, I really love to help people. So for that reason, I think that we are here, all of us. So, yeah, thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Cristina. And Boriss, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm a Chilean guy living in Belgium, working with Alfresco, I think, since 2011. I'm a founder member and a board member of the Order of the Bee, which is an organization of the community of Alfresco. I truly believe in the fundamental interconnectedness of all things, and that's why I like to do collaboration in order to solve problems. That's how I get into open source and all this kind of stuff. And I think I'm going to put on my CV now that I join a panel with John Newton.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Boriss. So the way we're going to do things is over the last 6 weeks or so, we've collected questions from the community, and we have a document here. So I'll take the first one, then Cristina, then Boriss. We'll just pick our favorite questions off of that. I tried to group them. We got a lot of duplicate questions. I'm worried that we won't have time to cover everything. But we are also following chat, so chat.alfresco.com. And so if you have a question that dovetails with one of the conversation points, feel free to put it there, and we will follow that and work that into the conversation, and hopefully we have a little bit of time at the end for additional questions. So my favorite question, the question I picked to start off, I thought would be a good icebreaker, is John, you've been on the founding board of 3 companies. How does somebody decide to go through that pain of 3 startups?
Well, I guess I'd ask a different question. Why would people go through the pain of working in a large corporation? I just don't get that. Actually, you know, I was talking about this yesterday. Somehow I have entrepreneurship in the blood. I was the kind of guy who set up lemonade stands when I was a kid. Actually, in the Central Valley of California, I got a farmer to give me some cantaloupes for free. I had a little red wagon, put a bunch of cantaloupes in a little red wagon, and sold them for 10 cents a piece, 3 for a quarter. And I used to sell drawings of people when I was young, and so I don't know. It's just there was something really exciting about starting a business. And you know, when I got to Berkeley, there's a much longer story there, but basically my professors at Berkeley had started Ingress. And you know, I just looked at what was out there, working for IBM or working for DEC or Prime at the time or whatever. And I had specialized in databases already, and it was quite clear. It looked like so much more fun to start up with my professors. It felt more like home, and so that got it started. And actually seeing it work, actually seeing a startup be successful, it spurs you on to do it again. And so within a few months of leaving Ingress after 10 years, I decided that I would start Documentum along with Howard Chow. And then after 10 years, I went off and started Alfresco. There was actually a little bit before that, which is Activity, just like the BPM engine. But yeah, I just do startups, and I just cannot imagine, you know, spending my life in a big corporation.
Excellent. I've certainly enjoyed seeing Alfresco grow over the last 6 years. It's been a lot of fun to work at a startup that's functional. I've tried a couple that haven't been nearly as successful.
Yeah, it helps to, you know, have gone through it before. You know, it's you know, a lot of people just try it and they try to hold on to too much of the company over time, and that's why a lot of them fail. So you just got to be realistic about your own capabilities as well.
Excellent. Cristina, what question would you like to ask?
Well, you know, we have a really bunch of collection of questions, but as I mentioned you before, I want to ask one question that I have for a long time. You know, this kind of thing that you say, hey, why not ask to John Newton, because maybe it's good to know what is his point of view. So, John, I have, as you know, I am training, and I give some training in general in Spain, in Europe in general, you know, online. So I know that there are some companies that they are using some Alfresco old version. So, and I, after that moment, I was asking to these guys, hey, why are you using, because at that moment was the version 2, and we were on 4 already, so why are you using version 2? Why don't you upgrade? And you know what was his reply? Was like, come on, Cristina, Alfresco 2 is working properly. We don't want to change. Right. So my question is, for those people or companies that they are still using the old one, what can you advise them in order to, you know, upgrade, and what is the point here, the good point here for upgrading?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is so much stuff in the newer releases. You know, it's just hard to begin. You know, so basically, that's what we do is we add new capabilities to each release, and we're encouraging people to upgrade. And there's a lot of reasons to for purposes of scale, for usability, things like that. You know, if it does work, and it's just for a very specific use case, then it's kind of hard to argue with that. However, I think Andrea Lagan's organization has done a really good job, first of all, of getting people to upgrade to 4.2. You know, it's like turn on 4.2 now program and kind of talk people through and make sure that they're successful. And you know, I'm sure we will be doing a 5.0 one as well. And really, the search capabilities in 5.0 alone are the reasons to upgrade. You know, just all the power of solar just coming to the fore in Alfresco. So I just talk about some of the new capabilities, and you know, it's a lot different from version 2.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know also. But you know, I think that the main point here is they were using as repository on that case. Okay. So
Yeah.
for them, it's like a transparent, the new feature. But maybe no, huh? Maybe, you know, maybe nobody explained them, like what is the good points, the good features, or activity, or you know, the changes, the big changes. So that is a good point here.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the scale of their problem is and how many users they have, and you know, over time, we're going to be making it easier and easier to go onto the cloud of things like AWS and just kind of switch it on and you know take away a lot of the problems of actually maintaining the system.
That is a good point. Yeah. So Richard, do you want if I continue, or let's give it one opportunity to Boriss?
Yeah, we'll give Boriss a shot.
Okay, good. So you mentioned Ingress, which is a predecessor to Postgres, which is the database that I really love. And I always have this kind of chat with my colleague. We work at CIRB in Brussels. And he's the Oracle database guy. And he just wanted to piss me off one day and say, hey, you know the news? Oracle bought a PostgreSQL. Like, come on, that's not possible. You cannot buy PostgreSQL. You can buy some microsystem and then you buy MySQL and OpenOffice together with it. But you can't buy PostgreSQL or Linux. So, but then somebody else says, but you can buy Alfresco. And then my question is to you, the people who invested in MySQL and OpenOffice needed to kind of migrate after Oracle bought it. What can you say to the people who is investing in Alfresco? What happens if somebody buys Alfresco?
Yeah, so actually, I got to meet Mike Stonebreaker again, the founder of Postgres, fairly recently. He just received the Turing Award. It's the ACM's highest award. It's sort of considered the Nobel Prize of computer science. And he took a smaller group of us and just kind of went through reminiscences of the last 35 years of Ingress, Postgres, and actually it's been a bit longer because the first Ingress started in 1975. So we're talking about 40 years of Ingress and Postgres. And one of the things he said was one of the big wins of what's happened in his entire career was that without doing anything, people just picked up Postgres and just made it work. The community started to support it and started to make it work. And then a whole bunch of new businesses started to form around Postgres. You may be aware of a lot of the companies that Mike has created as well around, oh boy, there's Streambase, there's also Columnar database. He's built a whole bunch of database companies, but really underneath it's all Postgres. And I think what you'll find is with Alfresco, if we don't do the right thing, it will still keep on going. It will evolve in its own directions, which is what happened with Postgres. But also you take a look at MySQL, and even somebody as greedy as Oracle, who just wants to screw as many dollars out of you as possible, recognize that there was a limit to what they could do with a really open source project like MySQL. And it actually have been pretty benevolent toward it in general, so they kind of kept the license. One thing I didn't really like was when they changed the connector to GPL, and I mean that was a bit tricky, but aside from that, they have continued to invest in it. So I think no matter what happens to Alfresco, and by the way, our intentions are to keep on going, to become a public company, and see this thing through. I am certainly in no mood to do any new startups, and my wife won't let me, even if I wanted to. But three's enough. But it will keep on going. It will definitely keep on going. Lots of good examples to show that. I mean, it's just too valuable to people at this point. You wouldn't believe some of this. I mean, we can't publicly talk about some of the stuff that's out there. But the brands, the government agencies that are using it are, it's mission critical, and they'll want to make sure that it keeps on going no matter what.
Good.
Well, I think the Oracle example shows the value of that open source commitment.
Yeah.
Sorry, Boriss, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's good, good. So you have a question, Richard. Can you carry on?
Yeah, so we talked a bit about what would happen if Alfresco got bought. We talked a bit about how you don't like working for large companies. There was a community question. I forgot who submitted, but what steps are you taking or do you want to take to not become the Documentum you left? Documentum got really big. It's a very proprietary model, and part of this question is the Enterprise Edition is a proprietary product built on top of the Community Edition core. How do you preserve the flavor that makes Alfresco what it is?
Yeah, so we're constantly looking and revisiting the principles that we've laid out for what's open source, what's not open source, and so that open sourceness keeps things going. And I have to say, the community has actually been really important for us to continue innovating. I've described it as probably the largest R&D organization in ECM because it's not just us. It's things like the faceted search. It's things like analytics. It's even things like desktop sync. There's a lot of things that, even if we didn't necessarily take the code that's available out there, the fact that it's open source and changeable and whatever, it means that people are trying some really interesting things. And so like some of the stuff that's going on right now in conjunction with Mahout, with machine learning, with Stambol, with semantic analysis, and a bunch of other technologies, they're paving the way for where we should be going in terms of adding new capabilities. So I would say, first of all, you guys are the ones who kind of keep us going and not lapsing into Documentum land. The other thing is, we just got to keep an eye out for what are we trying to accomplish, get focused, and actually some of the processes that Thomas DeMeo has brought in place with 3 in a box, with the UX, with the system architect, and the product management, and then also portfolio analysis to kind of look at all the things we can be doing, what's going to have the biggest impact. And actually, for a couple of years, we were kind of over-investing in technical debt and not enough in differentiation. And that was a mistake that Documentum made, is to not invest in differentiation, to keep on going. And as a result, the whole ECM industry became very much a me too, hey, we got this, yeah, we got this too. Whereas, have we solved all the problems of content management? No way have we solved all the problems. So let's stop shining I'll just call it the stone. Let's add on to it. Let's keep innovating, and you guys are helping out with that.
Excellent response. Cristina, your turn.
Okay, talking about community, I have here one really, really good, and this is, in order to think a little bit, because as you know, there are a lot of company people and entities that they are using community version. So my question here is more related to why Alfresco don't get the opportunity and do like a partnership or something like that, like agreement between Alfresco and those companies. For example, in the case of integrators, because as we know, there are different kind of partners. But focus on the community, because sometimes it's complicated to see which company or to find companies that are, has the skills in order to just integrate or install Alfresco properly and, you know, evaluate, escalate. So this is the first point is that, and the second one is maybe in case that you can think, okay, this is good idea, we can do something like that. Maybe it's really nice to create something like a medals or certification like the ACE or the ACA, like we have right now with the Alfresco certificate in engineering, but applicable on those companies, you know, but all focus on the community part, but for sure align with Alfresco, because in other case it has no sense.
Yeah, sure.
What do you
Okay.
think about that?
Yeah, so I guess it comes down to how can we build a sustainable business. Before we started Alfresco, one of our investors is Accel Partners, and actually we got funded by Accel about the same time that Facebook did. And so Facebook found a very successful business model. But Accel is a really early investor in a lot of technologies, a lot of companies, and a lot of good ideas. And but they do it in a very systematic way. So they were looking at open source and what worked, what didn't work, and kind of analyzed all the different things you could do and what were the best business models. And it was, to a certain extent, you got to figure out how are you going to make money, how are you going to sustain yourself. And so one of them was service, to be able to provide service. Another one is to provide add-ons on top of it. And there was a few other models as well. Now, the ones that just do pure community, absolutely no difference whatsoever, and kind of keep it open, they do have a ceiling in terms of the amount of money that they can actually generate. It tends to be you will not see a company exceed about $20 million. Now, we are many times $20 million in terms of revenue. However, we're not profitable either. And the reason we're not profitable is because we're putting the money back into the product, back into getting the word out that Alfresco exists, back into supporting the product, and a number of other things as well. So we can either, and we're also investing a pretty high proportion of our budget to R&D. It's over 25%. It's actually about 27% in R&D, and that's for a company our age. It's actually on the high end. There are some companies that do higher, and really kind of depends on how easy the model is and how cash generative you can actually add stuff. Now, this is a very long-winded answer to say we need to be able to provide a model that we can take and sustain and grow. So we are now putting in $12 to $15 million a year in R&D. And if we were a $20 million company putting in 25%, that would be about $4 million in R&D. So basically, the community are actually getting a lot because we can have a successful business model. Now, if we were to take away support and take away, channels to market and stuff like that, then we wouldn't be able to make the money that would allow us to be able to contribute to that. We haven't done anything to prevent people from doing that, but we got to focus on our model, which is certified enterprise partners, certified enterprise product, and support, because what we're selling is support, and we just need to make sure that that's a successful model and can continue to invest back into the product. I hope that answered your question. As far as other forms of certification and whatever, we're looking at that, and so whatever can get people onto the track without kind of screwing up the business, we will figure out, because we want to get people from community to take on enterprise, but some people will, some people won't.
Well, depends the need, huh? This is always the same. If one client can tell you, hey, I want community, but they have a really big institution, sorry, but the community is something difficult. Maybe you need a cluster, so it depends on the needs of the client. You can recommend enterprise or community, but this is something that. But thank you for the reply. Yeah, for the answer.
I think so something like SharePoint is actually free. You know, for a lot of people it's free, either because they got it as part of their enterprise license, or just because you can download something and you can actually get it working with a few things. And you know, as a lot of our competitors like Documentum, whatever, are concerned, they have found it very difficult to compete with free, which is our community version. Now, with something as big as Microsoft, perhaps, you know, for some of the use cases, we can really only compete free for free. You know, so use the community version for those who are using SharePoint for various types of things. And then one thing that Thomas is really focusing on is how can we make that experience of going from the community to enterprise be as seamless as possible, you know, like a push of a button or whatever, to make that a lot easier. So that makes, to a certain extent, you know, more community usage, more community support actually be more of that on-ramp to getting to enterprise.
And while we're on this topic, I just want to mention that I've been working with the partner team. We brought in a new partner lead, and they've been looking at the program to figure out different levels of on-ramps so that it's more accessible to people. But as a follow-up question, John, so how does this apply to offering support for Community Edition? If people want to pay for it, why don't we let them?
Yeah, so it's because that's essentially what you're buying. You know, when you buy the enterprise version, is you're buying support. The differences between the enterprise version and the community version aren't that great. You know, they're primarily around administration and scalability. So people will still buy support from us who don't have those scalability issues, who don't have the administration requirements, but just want the support. So that's what we're selling. Now we've kind of restructured the license to a certain extent. The service that we're providing is more or less the same as it was right when we started, right at the very beginning when we started, which is we provided you a service contract. Now it's a product license, but we're really providing you with service, really providing you with support. So I think we're just not doing it on the community version. And again, we need to make sure that we have a sustainable business to feed back into the community in the first place.
Yeah, I try to run the numbers. Providing the quality of support that we do at a price that a Community Edition user is interested in is very challenging. So yeah, it is something we've looked at.
Yeah, I believe so I just talked about 25% being in R&D, and I believe it's around 20% for support. So, you know, it's a pretty big number, you know.
And a question from chat.alfresco.com on this topic is, part of the way we differentiate between Community Edition and Enterprise Edition is Community Edition is a single server install. Everything that requires clustering and multi-servers we reserve for Enterprise. So the question is machines have gotten more powerful with 32 and 64 cores. Does that erode the differentiation between Community Edition and Enterprise Edition? Make it harder to have that sustainable business?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, Moore's Law is one that we've always had to consider and take into account when you have. And you know, I was talking to a bank recently, and I don't remember the size of the machine, but it was like I don't know if it's 32 cores or 64 cores or whatever. They don't put anything else out, and they needed to make sure that the Alfresco solution that they were deploying was big enough to be able to consume all that. Now, if we had gone to number of CPUs as opposed to number of cores, you know, that just gets really, really complicated. So we need to be able to figure out what the value is, and the value equation is always one of the hardest problems of enterprise software right now. So, you know, I think in the long run, as enterprise software becomes more in cloud, whether it's private, public, or whatever, it will become more about how do you measure the service. And so we've already started looking at it from the point of view of how many users are using it, we may see things where it may be very small number of users, but they're storing like billions of documents. And so the old model of click charge, of charging by the amount that you're storing or the number you're storing or the rate that you're storing, may open up entirely new business models overall. So I think as people are trying to consume software more as a utility as opposed to a thing that you download and install, then for those who want to take it and install it and run it as a community version would be one thing. Those who want to consume the service will be looking from the people who created the service in the first place.
Excellent. I think that's all the questions on that topic. Boriss, you want to introduce a new one?
Yeah, this one involves a mental exercise. So you have to imagine yourself that somebody very special come to you and says, "I'm going to take you to a special place." So he take you to a lift. You go very, very, very high at the top of a mountain, and then you see the valley of softwares, especially those that are related to Alfresco. So you see Alfresco, Documentum, SharePoint, and all the other software that are involved there. So you can see them very high. You can see all the features, how they compare to each other, and then the guy offers you to pick one of these two things. So you look at Alfresco, you look at the others, and you say, "What do you want for Alfresco? More new features or less bugs?"
And my answer is probably different than the company's answer, because just who I am, I'm an entrepreneur. I like to start new things. I'm impatient for the future. I go out, I try to invent the future. So I always will pick more new features. And that drives a lot of people crazy, like our VP of Engineering, Brian Remington, who when I say, "Oh, we should add this feature," probably rolls his eyes, but in a very pleasant way. And no, but I think the company in recent years has prioritized fixing bugs over new features, because we're in a position now that we are in mission critical applications. Well, I'll give you a really good example. There's a lot that's been said about Obamacare, and how things went really wrong. Well, that was the website that failed, and failed miserably because they did not invest in bugs. However, what's in the back end from the beginning and still today was Alfresco storing basically any time that people signed up, at a rate of about $250,000 an hour, they were taking and signing up for Obamacare as the deadline loomed. And Alfresco stood up very well to those levels. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that we had been working and concentrating on bug fixes. So we have the United States Health, can thank Alfresco fixing bugs for that success. So I think that was the right decision at that particular time. It's very strong. But I think we're now in a cycle where we probably need to focus more on some of the differentiation. Just make it a slam dunk, no-brainer that you go with Alfresco versus OpenText, FileNet, SharePoint, whatever.
So go ahead, Boriss.
Yeah, so the same guy then asks you, what do you prefer, Alfresco, being faster or being cheaper?
I prefer faster. I was the big advocate of the recent benchmark that we ran to get up to 1 billion documents, and just challenge the team to go on to Amazon and let's get AWS to scale to 1 billion documents. And so they did it, and it's like super fast as well. Doing 3 million an hour. So that's. And I was just talking to somebody who used to work at OpenText, and it's like they said that we're lucky if we can get like 2 million a day, and get 3 million an hour is just, is like a couple orders of magnitude. So I like that. So when they got that done, they go, "Okay, John, now what?" It's like, well, infinite. I want to scale infinite. And how do you scale infinitely? You have to be really fast to scale infinitely. So let's get it infinitely fast. make it super distributed, and that's my preference over cheaper, because I just want to store everything. And then the faster we can get to everything, you know, the sooner I'll be satisfied.
So one of our community questions on this topic was, as Alfresco's become more mission critical and as the company has grown, it gets harder to innovate. Have we gotten too big to innovate? What are the innovations that you're most proud about that Alfresco's done in the past, especially the recent past, and how will Alfresco next shake up the industry?
Okay, so you know, it's kind of up to all of us to encourage that, and you know, I think we've made a renewed effort to encourage the engineers and actually other people in the company to innovate more. You know, you're never too big to innovate. You can certainly introduce anti-innovation processes that will kill innovation, but you know, that's your own fault. So I think we need to constantly inject that. Now, what am I most proud of? You know, the thing that still keeps coming back as a key differentiation of Alfresco are the rules and aspects that we got right at the very beginning. You know, that's still, nobody really has that, and that was just an insight to say, you look how people manage metadata, you know, in Documentum, and by the way, FileNet copied Documentum and SharePoint copied Documentum, and so we just wanted to do it in a different way, because everybody else was copying everybody else, and you know, sometimes it's like so old it's become new, and so we're kind of re-injecting this as a core differentiation. So I'm very proud of that. In the recent past, I just think, you know, going all in on solar and looking at the capabilities of what we can do. So Andy Hind did a lot of stuff. Kev Roast built some great user interface to make it easy to be able to use, and we all recognize that we're just beginning with that. And we recently hired Joel Bernstein, who was the architect of Solar Cloud, and is doing some really amazing stuff with solar. So I think as we more loosely couple our architecture to have activity go on its own path, watch solar go to Solar 6, and some of the amazing stuff from analytics to joins and queries and stuff like that, I just think there's going to be some amazing things there. Now, the other thing about solar and search, the guys down in Germany, Jens Dahl and his team in Romania, are actually building what he calls virtual folders. So imagine navigating into a folder, but what comes up are queries, and multiple queries. So each different folder you click on is a template-driven query that brings in just the information you want. Like, give me all the purchase orders, give me all the photographs, give me all the whatever, you know, that might be related to what you're working on. And then they also have rules for when I drag something in there, use that context to automatically classify the information and set the metadata in there. And I think that is going to be really, really powerful. You know, I think it's really going to distinguish us from everything else that's out there in terms of ECM. So that's the one I'm proud of in the future.
Excellent. And a question from the chat channel is, what are some of the biggest challenges facing Alfresco right now?
Okay, you know, we're experiencing some growing pains as we get to this particular level. You know, we're getting to the scale of IPO, but we're still, you know, looking at the predictability from quarter to quarter. We don't have that predictability to be able to go public, and we would really like to go public, but we're not going to do it until we're ready. So that's certainly a challenge. I think we've been addressing bit by bit a lot of the product issues that we have, and something that didn't add a lot of value today but will add a lot of value in the future was separating out the share from the repository and building out a cleaner public API, along with cleaner separation, and that will allow us to be able to innovate faster and for you to be able to build new applications just on a headless repository. So getting that stuff cleaned up was a challenge, and we're still working that through. There's also just a lot of things that have nothing to do with product, just a lot of execution in terms of sales and stuff like that, and that's why I'm not in sales. So I don't like to deal with problems like that. So, but it's a lot of things that companies our size go through. They're nothing new. They're all really solvable. They don't really keep me up at night, and so that's kind of some of the challenges.
Excellent. Cristina, I think it's your turn to ask a question.
Coming back to the community and all of these things, I don't know if you already know, but Boriss and me, and there are more members, we are trying to organize the first event at the global event, and we will try to organize in Brussels next April. We don't have yet the date, but we are thinking to, there was one moment that we said, if we need to choose somebody for a speaker, to introduce, to came with us, and you are the man. You are the best one. So you wanna come and talk?
Yes, sure, absolutely. If we could just work out, the schedule and stuff. There's a couple commitments that I have on a quarterly basis. If we just work around those, it'll be great. I'd be very happy to.
Well, we need to. Well, we are organizing. We are on that part of the event, but we hope to celebrate next year, at least in April, in Brussels, because we have different locations. We open the opportunity to people just participate with their idea, and finally, well, we've organized between Spain and Brussels, but finally we'll be in Brussels. So I hope seriously that you will come.
Okay. And, well, you can help by giving me some ideas in terms of the theme that I should be doing for the presentation. So I just finished up my presentation for reInvent down in Las Vegas, and look out for the slides. They'll be posted relatively soon. I'm actually speaking on the 8th of October. So there's yet another theme of presentations that just go a little bit off topic from the technical stuff. So I'm sure we've got to do something around Belgium, or Belgium beers or something like that. Monks and fires making beer, I don't know.
and John, is a follow-up on this question, on the question about the Order the Bee conference, is we used to have a global Alfresco summit that's migrated into Alfresco days. In some ways, that makes it harder for the community to interact with the engineering team because we don't bring the entire engineering team to every single Alfresco day. How can we help the engineering team and the open source contributors interact more since Summit has evolved?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the way we should think about it is Summit is going global. It's turning into a road show, and maybe not even road show, it's a road trip. And what we haven't really quite gotten started yet, I spoke to Sydney about this yesterday. We will be starting the developer tracks at the Alfresco days starting in October. And the whole idea is to have something more targeted toward developers. And Brian Remington has also allocated engineers to go to each of them. So you don't get everybody at once, but it means that you don't need to travel thousands of miles or even hundreds of miles to participate in them. We're going to have them all over the world. This will be an ongoing thing, not just a particular week or whatever, and the engineers will be there, just not all of them. And the best way that you can make sure that you want to get the engineers that you want to see at that site is to drum up support, get the attendance up, and put the demand in there for certain people to be there. And they can't be there all the time, but the greater the demand in a particular city, the more likely it is that you will get that particular person. So tweet a lot is one way. Yeah, contribute a lot to the forums, the wikis, everything else, and just make your feelings felt.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute while I was typing. Boris, would you like to ask another question?
Yes, I'm going to come back to this exercise when you're looking into the value of software. Now, I'm from Chile, so in Chile we have a lot of earthquakes, so this is a regular topic for me. So imagine now that you have a massive earthquake and the valley is open and all the software you're seeing dies. And they come to the judgment day, and then they need to decide whether your software is going to hell, to heaven, or stay in a while in the purgatory. So what do you think is going to happen with Alfresco? Is it going to hell or to heaven?
Okay. I've had a little bit of time to think about it. Well, I also come from a land of earthquakes. I was there during the 1989 earthquake in the Bay Area, and Ingress was fortunately on strong pillars, but it was in landfill that liquefied, and water was bubbling up, and it was kind of scary, and the building smelled of gas, and it all could have blown up right then. And it's really unfortunate, I think, some of the missteps that happened to Ingress, and I think it's kind of that they're sort of in purgatory, I would think. There's a lot of products in hell right now. Fortunately, I don't think any of them that I ever worked on are in hell. And Documentum, keep praying. So, but I think we've been good citizens. I've talked about the amount that we take and we give back to the community in terms of product, for sure. In terms of trying to get out to everybody, and when we talk about the summits and the hackathons and whatever, those haven't been limited to any particular people. It's an opportunity for everybody to get together. So please, St. Peter, I think I've been a good boy, and we've been good boys, so please take us into software heaven, and hopefully be like MySQL, live forever and keep on going for eternity, and keep on evolving as well.
Okay, so a second part of that question would be, in the judgment, you have the employees of Alfresco, the partners of Alfresco, the customers, and community members. Who do you think is going to shout louder for Alfresco to support them to go to heaven?
Yeah, well, my guess is employees. I just went, I actually organized the Documentum 25th anniversary, and out of those, the number of people who still work at Documentum was a very, very small percentage. So you can imagine, over 25 years, all these guys with gray hair and and bellies and whatever, but they still feel very fondly of Documentum, and to a certain extent, they're still some of the biggest cheerleaders. I think everybody has a commitment. They put a lot of their heart and soul into Alfresco, and so I would hope that the employees continue to be, some of the biggest cheerleaders for this. But I also hope that we provide customers, and I'll use customers in a more general sense, users of the software, enough value that that's like it becomes important for them, that they cheer for us to keep going. So. It's hard to choose any of those, but I guess that's the order I would choose them.
Okay, good.
Excellent. There's been a lot of conversation on the chat channel about virtual folders and what that means and the pros and cons. It definitely got people excited.
Well, they should be excited.
Absolutely, very excited. So one question from the chat channel is about how APIs fit into the larger question of Alfresco's products. It seems like Alfresco developers build lots of great new features and share, but there's been little work on the APIs. He said no work, but there's been some work. Is Alfresco a product or a platform? Will better APIs come soon?
Okay, well, a platform can be a product, and a product can be a platform. So, I don't think we followed one of the principles that we probably should have, which is API first development, and I think you will see more of that in the future. There's definitely an emphasis and effort to put more into the public APIs. Certainly, CMIS is been very important to us. I mentioned Obamacare earlier. Obamacare was built entirely on top of CMIS and still managed to get the 25 or 250,000 documents per second storage in there. But I think people are looking for something a bit more modern in terms of RESTful APIs, make navigation, make some of the basic things you want to do inside of Alfresco easier. And so there is some effort going into developing those APIs as part of the next release. So you'll see some effort definitely in that area. Certainly 5.1, and I don't think we've talked a lot about 5.1 in public, has more capabilities as far as APIs are concerned, but the release after that is going to have even more. I think what I'd like to see as well is perhaps CMIS just kind of come back and rethink where we are today after more than 5 years of CMIS out in the wild. And I actually talked to a guy from IBM as well about can we do something new? Can we do something different? I think what you see is a pattern of API very similar from coming out of Google, and then Box copies Google's public APIs, and Dropbox has theirs, which are similar, and they're getting similar functionality, and Evernote has this functionality. So I think there's some basic patterns of how APIs work against content stores, regardless of what they are and what they do. And maybe we should have a flavor of CMIS that kind of conforms to those, is maybe a similar or even replicated pattern as far as those concerned. And so I think CMIS, I do think CMIS has a future. It's been important for a lot of customers, but I do think it can evolve and maybe be more inclusive against other things like, like Google Drive, like Box, like Dropbox, and a lot of other stores as well.
Excellent. Oli, our developer evangelist, was posting, check out the Tech Talk Live from last July, all about the APIs, and Oli wishes he could join and share his opinion, but he gets a whole Tech Talk Live to do that whenever he likes. So, yeah. But definitely he's very focused on improving the developer experience in the APIs, especially the REST APIs are a priority, he says.
Yeah. One thing, the only thing that's just having APIs are great, I love them, but only having APIs, for instance, it will not help external people to fix bugs. So then the openness of the source is important to fix bugs. So when we were talking about new features or fixing bugs, having that opportunity for the community to contribute in that way is also an important thing not to forget about, I think.
Yeah, that's stuff that we recognize that we can do better on, and it's not like we don't want to do it. It's we have to have the internal processes to actually make it work better. It's not like no bugs have come in and been contributed, but it isn't like it's been easy necessarily to contribute bug fixes as it should be. Believe it or not, Ola, that's one of the reasons we brought you on and brought on Martin Björlin and whatever, is to make it have some of the people in place to make that process work. We just need to take the next step toward kind of opening up the contribution process. We've had a lot of discussion, and now's the time for some action on that.
And I have to say that's an area that's one of the things that keeps me up at night is how do I improve that contribution process. So apologize for how slow it's gone, but we are making progress.
Yeah.
So Richard, so that's one of the things. The other things are probably your new baby.
Yes, that keeps you up at night as well.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes left. Cristina, you want to ask your last question? And we'll call, sorry, Boriss, but we're going to call that one your last question.
Okay, it's fine.
So,
Oh, I think that there are many questions that are really, really, interesting. But I will ask you something about the cloud. What will be the future of the cloud? Because there are some people that believe that everything is just focusing on the cloud. But really, what is your plan for Alfresco? Is just to migrate? You will not support Alfresco 1 in servers? Or what is your perspective here?
Well, we are doing a lot of stuff with AWS in particular. We probably won't work exclusively with AWS, probably look at Azure as well. And also, we don't want to be an exclusive provider of cloud capabilities either. We have a number of OEMs of people actually creating stuff, but boy, I could probably spend an entire session just on this. We're building not just a platform or framework or whatever, to build case management applications and use these virtual folders, among other things, to create new applications. But we're doing it in such a way that you will be able to run these applications in the cloud and still be able to talk to Alfresco on premise is the goal of what we're trying to do here. And also in terms of how Alfresco runs, there's Docker is an amazing technology that I think will actually significantly change the way computing is done and make the whole idea of how we use virtual machines will be just completely different, and will change how cloud works as well. So, where put everything into a single big thing called a SaaS offering doesn't allow you to have the isolation that people really want with things, especially like enterprise content management. But I think Docker will make it very cost effective to have lots and lots of Alfrescos running on a few machines, and for us to be able to scale out ways that couldn't possibly imagine, but will behave exactly like Alfresco on premise. And you get the best of both worlds under that scenario, and that's what we're kind of aiming for here. We are exploring the possibility of us providing more hosted services as well, and stay tuned to see what happens there. But we also support people who are providing those managed services as well.
Okay, great answer.
I know. Okay.
Excellent. So we are at the top of the hour, and I know, John, you have many other meetings today. So last question, and you can take as long as you feel like, because we're all interested. What is your top advice for being successful in business and life? Very successful man. What advice do you give your son when you only get 2 minutes to give him advice?
Okay. Well, I was thinking about this. That something that kind of came back to me over and over again was some advice that my father gave. And you know what? I think I was only about 6 years old at the time. He was going to postgraduate school at the time, and he was studying operations research, and this is like slide rule days and whatever, and he was doing some of his first programming in Fortran. This would have been about the time Fortran 4 was coming out. And he just said, you have to keep on top of technology. You have to keep current. Otherwise, you just lose it really quickly. And also just the opportunity to specialize. He specialized in electronic warfare. He was a naval aviator. And just keeping on top of things and also specializing are things that have worked out really well for me. I just chose at a very early state to specialize in databases when relational databases were brand new. And so when I went out to interview for a job, it was like, it was easy. And same thing. I have specialized in content management, and I kind of stick to the knitting, and I do my very best to keep up on the latest trends in technology. I just believe it's really important to be able to do that. So, has my son taken that to heart? Well, he has specialized. He's gone into areas that other people don't. Neither of my kids like computer science, which, and they don't even like math. It's like it's like so boring, Dad. But my son has gone off. He's actually studied Russian for 7 years, and he's right now in Russia, in St. Petersburg, doing a semester abroad in Russian, and he has specialized in Eastern European history, and has a background not just in history but in philosophy and theology. That will put him in really good stead. He wants to work for the State Department, and I think he will be uniquely qualified for some really interesting global international challenges in the future. So he keeps on top of things. He differentiates himself. He specializes. So that's what I would do, is just try to be different, and be different in a way that adds value to the world.
Excellent. With those wise words from a successful leader, we're going to close this session. Thanks for the office hours, John, Cristina, and Boriss. Lots of positive feedback from the chat channel. People really enjoyed it. Great. And I definitely learned a lot, so thank you.
Yeah, that hour went very quickly, so thank you.
That's good.
We'll have to have you back. So.
All right. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Cristina. Bye.
Bye.